Okay, there's a few risks I keep seeing from COVID. The media and the doctors and our medical professionals, they're not really talking about them too much, and I think because they're kind of almost quasi medical psychological in nature, but I really think they're kind of worth talking about because they're the kind of things that play out over time. And I've noticed from risk management perspective and personal health, people are not always that great at stretching things out, over longer periods and thinking about the larger, bigger picture. So with COVID, we kind of know that it's killed 500,000 people. This is an absolute American tragedy that no one's seen in 100 years since World War One ish times. And we kind of know the disease is primarily affects older people. It primarily affects people with comorbidities. Age is a big problem. The older you get, the more it is prone to affect you. And younger people seem to be recovering faster. They have less symptoms, and it looks like they may not have any long-term damage, but we don't know. We usually get some damage from disease. Um, so the point is though is that this is more personal in nature about maybe not thinking about getting it, as opposed to like say moral in nature about not getting it. And what I mean that if you're younger, if you're healthier, that the probability of getting sick or really sick from it is really lower. But that doesn't necessarily mean you should get it because obviously, if you get it, you can spread it to other people. And, sometimes in life, we have to make sacrifices for other people. And that's what I think kind of the definition of a good person is. They do that kind of stuff sometimes. I guess a lot of Americans, I don't know, they don't want to do that. But, and then the same thing with the vaccine. So the vaccine, maybe you don't want it, and maybe you're sort of correct that, you're younger and, or whatever, you don't want to get it. But by not getting it, you're also contributing to this spreading everywhere and being a problem, around the country for a much longer time. So it's not just about you; it's about the collective and the effect of getting the vaccine that will quickly bring things down, even if you may not really even need it because you're maybe healthy or whatever. Um, so that's the moral dimension, and this is going to be a little more on the personal side. Okay, so if you're younger or you think you're healthy or whatever, you may be saying to yourself, hey, okay, COVID, it looks like I can handle it. I have a good immune system. I don't have a lot of diseases. I haven't had a lot of accidents. I can get it. But the one thing to keep in mind is that, as you, as life goes on, um, and you head towards death, and we all kind of grow, and then you kind of head downward. Um, or at least towards death and bad health. But life, bad health is about the accumulation of conditions, and we only have a certain amount of conditions that we can accumulate before we end up in a really bad spot, and we die or our life is so severely impacted that we really have to change things and are diminished. Okay, so if even if you are younger, you have to say to yourself, well, I got COVID. Okay, uh, and I feel I seems like the disease is passed, but it's pretty unlikely, just like with any kind of disease or accident, that it doesn't leave some sort of damage to you. It may be minor, but the point is that over time, you have to factor in the fact that you're gonna have other things happen to you. Okay, uh, and if you've already had COVID, we only get a finite amount of things that can happen to us before things start really going downhill. And that's hey, think about the rest of your life. If you're younger, you're gonna have getting you may get in a car accident, get sick. You may have to have surgeries that are unexpected. You may have another disease, and so when you think about it from that perspective, you might say to yourself, well, if I sacrifice myself and try and not get it, hey, I may be getting ahead because if I do get it, it is possible that I'm more, in some sense, like cashing in one of my chips, and we only have a certain amount of chips, and of course this varies from person to person, but it's definitely something to think about. How many other things am I going to have go wrong in the future that I'll need my body and my health for, and if I already have COVID, is that something that's going to be hurt me? It does look like, yeah, of course, it looks like maybe they're, you pass it and you're okay, but there's really no such thing as getting a disease and just being fine. I mean, that doesn't exist. It's like saying otherwise we'd all get the flu all the time, and no one would care. So definitely incur damage. Because I see people occasionally thinking like they get COVID or something, and then like they're stronger, like because they're immune, and then you may be immune, but that doesn't mean that the disease hasn't harmed you in some way. So it's kind of a bad way of thinking about the risk of it. So it's just something more for a longer period of time. You have to think about, hey, how many of these things am I going to get? And how many other incidents in the future am I going to have that it's going to affect me? Okay. Okay, so now I want to talk about something even more about the psychology of the risk of getting disease over time, and another point that people probably aren't thinking about. So it seems to me in the U.S. and I think probably the Western world, it seems like Asia has a little better handle on this whole the COVID thing. There's a couple type of people. There's a kind of person in this country that is in America anyway, who's been lucky enough to have good health most of his life. Hasn't had a lot of major accidents or surgeries or just diseases, stuff like that, and they've been really fortunate. And they also do a good job watching their health. And I mean, like the regular stuff. They try and watch their diet, they try and exercise, they don't smoke, stuff like that. And so that's one person in America, in the US. And it seems like they're kind of rare, but they're there. Then we have like the flip side is you have a person in the US who just like really does not care about their health at all. I mean, they don't care, what they eat. They don't care how many pills they take to control lifestyle diseases. They don't want to exercise. They don't want to stop smoking. It just goes on. And they've had things happen to them, and they just don't care. And that's kind of the way they want to live. They're just like, I don't care. And they're probably aware that they're just going to drop dead one day. And I mean, I think it's kind of sad, but that those people are there, and that's who they are. And then there's kind of the third kind of person, which seems to be very common, more than the other two, is that they have issues with their health, and they do some healthy things, but they seem to think that they're healthier than they are. Uh, and what I mean by this is like, and they're the kind of person that's like they're not aware that they're maybe overweight, and they're not aware that their health's in more jeopardy than they think. Oh, and I'm sorry. There is a fourth person. I should have said this. The fourth person is the kind of person that has a lot of health problems and is very aware of the dangers of COVID, and they are very careful about not getting disease because they know that they have issues that are going on. They can't afford to get it, and they don't want to get it, so they're really cautious. And that's the fourth kind. But the third kind, the person who kind of doesn't know. And these people may be, sick for a variety of reasons or have health issues for a variety of reasons. They've had accidents, they've had diseases, they're overweight, whatever, and they're pretty common. And then there's kind of like the and one of the I'm sorry, and one of the prime examples of this kind of person is the kind of person that thinks they're sort of healthy and sort of isn't, is a guy like Joe Rogan. Now, Joe Rogan is been super successful. Is a great podcast. He's a smart guy. I like him. But let's look at how he sort of lives his life. He is the kind of person that, in some ways, he does healthy things, but then he sort of contradicts himself. He fights in MMA. He's taking steroids, HGH, stuff like that, and I'm sure other stuff. So he, in my opinion, sort of lives, a risky life. Now he may be sort of aware of it, but sort of isn't aware of it at the same time. And the, and as opposed to other people that may just be overweight and have other risks that they're taking, and they're not aware of it either. They're just like, I'm fine. I should be able to get COVID and I'll be completely fine. This is all BS. So the point is though about, these, let's say person number three, is that I think what's going to happen is, and what has been happening is that if you're not aware of your health issues uh, and you say to yourself, well, I got COVID and and I found out it wasn't that big of a deal. Okay, and I maybe got sick for a while and I feel okay. But the problem is that if you aren't aware of the risks you've been accumulating in life from a health standpoint, and you survive, another risk, what happens is you just tend to take more risks. And that's a lot of people. That's like the kind of like the Joe Rogan, I think, mentality, where it's I kind of want to, and there's nothing wrong with that. You kind of want to live your life, but you got to say to yourself, am I really being healthy, or am I just BSing myself? Because if you keep taking these things, it catches up to you. And so thinking about, if you have an infectious disease, we have another outbreak, something else happens, we don't know if it'll be 100 years or something else will happen in 10. We have no idea. We don't know. But if you say to yourself, well, I've taken all these risks before and I've been fine, I got COVID and everyone told me I'd be sick, you know, there's a good chance you're going to be even more cavalier about the next disease. Now, not everybody. Some people will really weigh the odds, and they'll be right if something else comes around, and maybe they'll get it and be fine. But it's a process of sort of taking risks and not being aware of what you're really doing, and then one day you have a really bad accident. So that's kind of what concerns me about the West and maybe the U.S. too, where it's like in some sense, if we survive, the question is, if you survive, are you going to learn your lesson, or is a lesson just that this is nonsense and I can do whatever I want, and the risks are always overblown? Because I think that takes a lot of skill, because it seems to me that like the first thing you would do is really be cautious first, and then if you get it later on, when we know more, maybe it's better. But I think it's going to be a process. It's very easy to fall into that trap, and then you wind up really getting really, really sick. So that's kind of what I see, like a remote risk as we go into time, and we get over this, is too many people assuming that, well, this wasn't that big of a deal, and for maybe a lot of people it is, but then misjudging the next one. So thanks a lot. Okay, thanks so much for watching. The whole point of the first part is that over time we all accumulate adverse conditions to our health, and that ultimately winds up in death very later on in life. But sooner than that, it's just really bad health situation where we can't do as much in life. So if you get COVID-19, the question is that in 10 years from now or 5 years from now, when more things begin to add up in your life, are you going to be able to deal with those as well as you did in the past? And we don't really know that. It is it appears like some people get over the illness, but it's so hard to really understand whether there's things that are going to, adversely affect them in the future. And the second part is really about how some people, they're kind of natural risk takers, and they're sort of in denial about perhaps how healthy they are. And my worry is that if you are one of these people, and there's, I think, a lot of these people in the U.S. that maybe think that they're healthier than they actually are. If you get the disease and you shrug it off, the question is next time when you have something happen, are you developing like a risk-seeking mindset where your attitude is sort of just, I've taken these risks in the past and I've survived them. But, with COVID, it's definitely possible that just because you survived it, you've been perhaps more lucky than you think, because we don't really know a lot about the illness, and it's sort of just really, really uncertain. So it's just two long-term things to think about. Thanks a lot. Thanks, and thanks for watching. Bye.